recognizing how awesome 2014 was for feminism. Can we all just like hug ourselves, give her a pat on the back? For a magazine called Time, they sure don't seem to have an accurate sense of it when they called feminism dead 20 years ago, or said that we should ban the word this year when we've had such a phenomenal year. From women storming the halls of Congress to Beyonce like writing feminist essays between Slurpees at 7-Eleven to Laverne Cox being on every cover possible. It's been an incredible year, and I'm so happy to be here to talk about it with three legends and to sort of celebrate all of these successes. For those of you who were excited about Jessica Valenti being part of this panel, she has a pink eye, and she blames it on the patriarchy and being a mom to a 4-year-old. But Lizz Winstead has graciously offered to replace her, and she is not infectious with any diseases, so don't worry. So without further ado, I'd love to have our amazing panelists come in: Janet Mock, Joy Reid, and Lizz Winstead. Sit wherever. Just sit on the table.
We're just going to go in every order.
Awesome. So Janet Mock is a writer, cultural commentator, advocate for trans women's rights, and the New York Times bestselling author of Redefining Realness: My Path to Womanhood, Identity, Love, and so much more. A board member at the Arcus Foundation, Janet has been called one of the smartest women on Twitter by Fast Company, and her work has been recognized by the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, the Anti-Violence Project, and Planned Parenthood. So happy for you to join us, Janet.
Thanks so much for having me.
Joy Reid is host of the Reid Report on weekdays at 2 p.m. on MSNBC. Joy was the former managing editor of thegrio.com, a daily online news and opinion platform devoted to delivering stories and perspectives that reflect and affect African American audiences. Previously, she was a freelance columnist for the Miami Herald and editor of the political blog The Reid Report. She was also on TV all day today, practically. So, Joy, thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Lizz Winstead is co-creator and former head writer of The Daily Show and a co-founder of Air America Radio, where she was also a host. Her first book, Liz Free or Die, Essays, was released in 2012. Liz is currently working on a second book and is spearheading Lady Parts Justice, a national reproductive rights organization. Thank you, Liz, for coming in so short notice. And very important, I know Julie already mentioned it, but please tweet the hell out of this panel using the hashtag 92YMike. We are going to actually be taking questions from Twitter, so you might be a superstar. You are all superstars, but like, you know, we might answer your questions. Yeah, I'd love to start off. I mean, I talked briefly. Oh, and I want to thank Julie, Joey, and Asha from 92 Street Y, and James from Mike for putting all of this together, and all of you for being here. Thank you. So let's start off by talking about this year, 2014. Do you think that it was the best year in feminism yet? Can we talk about your favorite moments to begin with? Janet, do you want to start?
My favorite moment's very easy. It's Beyonce standing on the VMAs in a kaleidoscope leotard, serving you feminist realness. Like that was, to see her awakening, to see her take that stance in such a pop cultural space was amazing. It was empowering, and it was one of the moments that actually emboldened me to step forward and actually claim that label for myself. Even though I've been influenced, as I would say, by homegrown feminism, I wouldn't say that I was one of those, I guess, black women or black trans women who use that label to describe my own work, even though I was influenced by the movement, right? And so to see someone that I kind of grew up with in this cultural space take that stance when she didn't really have to, right? It was powerful for me. So for 2014, I think that would be the moment.
Awesome. What about you?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I do have to agree that I think, you know, I don't know if I would isolate one moment, but I think that Beyonce actually was very transformative this year. And I would identify her as really probably the person who kind of made feminism the most mainstream for younger women and sort of made sense to women my daughter's age. So I would say that actually she had an incredibly transformative moment, even though for some people it was controversial. Like some people question the amount of sexuality and sensuality in her work. But I thought even just the way she punked the music industry and put an entire album out without the permission of any company, and people didn't even have any idea that an entire year when she was doing this tour, that people were actually sort of poo-pooing the tour and saying there's nothing original here. Well, actually, she was making an entire 17, song opus, right? And shooting all of these pieces, and nobody knew it was happening. And I think she took control of her career and of the industry in a way that was actually really empowering. And the fact that she then added to that the deliberate feminist label, I thought was actually really powerful.
What about you, Liz?
Well, we're gonna go 3 Beyoncés? We're gonna go
yeah, you know. This panel's about Beyonce, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you cannot choose that moment, especially we started Lady Parts Justice so that we would put information about reproductive health into those spaces as well, using humor. And so to watch Beyonce step in and also reclaim that you still hear the tired old people saying, I'm not a feminist because I like men and stuff. And you're like, well, that has nothing to do with anything. So I like that sexuality is like at front and center, owning it, and saying we need to talk about feminism because it's many things, and let's have that conversation. And I think that Beyonce is the one that started off and has done it brilliantly. So I have to agree.
But she didn't have a uterus puppet.
No, she does not. I have.
And I thought it was awesome. I thought that was great.
Yeah,
because it made it. We had you on.
We didn't have quite the impact as Beyonce with the puppet, but.
Did you have a vagina mascot too? Was that, or did I just dream about that at the telethon?
No, well, that is from Babeland, the wonderful sex toy store Babeland. They have a Babeland vulva that they use to educate about homosexuality, and they're great. So I wish I could claim that we did own the entire vulvic experience, but that is not ours.
I mean, I'm really glad all three of you brought up Beyonce, because I think, I mean, the VMAs did something really interesting. If we actually just use the VMAs as sort of a barometer for gender equality or even feminism, we look at last year, 2013, we all remember Robin Thicke and Miley Cyrus singing Blurred Lines, a song that, you know, talks about the blurred lines of consent, which is creepy in a lot of ways. And then 2014 was all about female empowerment. So obviously Beyonce's performance was iconic. There's also Taylor Swift, Anaconda. I mean, it was all about women taking control of their image. But then you still had the sort of controversy surrounding it, right? So all over Twitter, people were saying, well, if that's what feminism is, why doesn't she have any pants on? And you know, we were talking about this before, even in her Super Bowl performance, which was in 2013 too, before she even sort of came out as a feminist, right? People, you know, it was a feminist performance. It was an all-female band. It was the first time it happened. And people were still saying, you know, why doesn't she have pants on? So like, why do we want Beyonce to wear pants so badly?
I don't want her to wear pants. I want her to wear whatever she wants. Like, that's the whole point, is that Beyonce got to not wear pants because Beyonce said, you know what? I'm not wearing pants.
Yeah. Deal with it.
Like, isn't that, I just feel like that's the whole point of this whole movement, to get to a place where you can go, I'm not wearing pants. And I own that. You don't. Like, right? Am I wrong?
I
is it like, it just seems so easy. We keep complicating feminism, and it's just not.
Yeah, and I think I mean, and we, you know, not that we're going to spend a lot, you know, the entire time talking about Beyonce, but I think the reason people gravitate toward it is because she's complicating all of what people think about when they think about kind of the feminist idea, because she is married, she is a mother, she does own that too, she makes that a part of her art, she incorporates her family, and she's doing kind of a really overt sexual thing within marriage. It's interesting. And so it's the kind of thing that if you divorced it from the no pants, would almost be something conservatives would gravitate toward. Right. But I think the label that feminism has historically had is, first of all, is something that is very white, something that is for, you know, older women, and is not very youthful, and that it has no relationship to wanting any relationships with men, and that is rejecting of maleness in some way. And she kind of isn't with any of that. Nicki Minaj is the same way. I mean, I think that a lot of these artists, and it isn't just them, I think young women in general, they don't have all of the kind of stock off-the-shelf labels for things that that a lot of us bring to ideas like feminism. So I think that for them, they just like the idea of a strong, empowered woman.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, one of the first critiques I always get anytime I'm like, sing over Beyonce, is the idea of like what she chooses to wear. And I find it so interesting that we police feminism in that way, or we just police people's gender expression or the way in which they present their bodies and how they want to present their bodies. I don't know why that's up for public debate. I don't know why it's your business what Beyonce wears or what she chooses to wear. I think echoing what Liz said, I think it's necessary that we allow people to present how they want to present, whether they're Beyonce or they're just someone walking on the street. And I think that a lot of it is definitely linked to what Joy was kind of saying about the idea of these images that we have around the term feminist or feminism, right? These are people who are not funny, they don't like humor, they don't like pop culture, they're, as you said, a bit older, they're white, they're cisgender, there's all these labels that we put there, and it pushes a lot of people out because they don't feel as if it's for them. And so I think that Beyonce, by proclaiming it and saying that it's for me with my ass out, with my baby and my husband in the audience, this is for me.
And speaking of pushing out, I mean, this leads really well into the conversation about celebrity culture. And sort of, I mean, 2014 was in a lot of ways defined by these coming outs by celebrities. And you know, Taylor Swift, Emma Watson's speech at the UN, Aziz Ansari, we had Joseph Gordon-Levitt. We had some really interesting people and unexpected personalities coming out and talking about feminism. But then there were also criticisms, right? A lot of people had trouble with Emma Watson's erasure of privilege. And again, who gets to talk? And who just gets to listen? And who does it include and who does it exclude? I'm interested if you guys had, what did you guys think about Emma Watson's speech or anything other sort of big celebrity event this year? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's difficult, you know, celebrities are not a good substitute necessarily for the way real people live. You know, they do have the privilege of being able to, you know, name their child Apple, and the child can still get a job, you know, right? So
because the child doesn't have to get a job.
Oh, that's true. It doesn't need a job, right?
Let's just be clear.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily, I mean, I kind of am, in a lot of ways, as much as I think it's important for celebrities to kind of represent in that way and give young women a role model to sort of express themselves. I'm almost more impressed by, if you look at some of the people who are also maybe well known but not sort of celebrities. I mean, we just had Malala Yousafzai, which I think is a different brand of it, but it is similarly just the idea that girls are valuable enough to go to school. You know, I think about the Chibok Girls movement, the Bring Back Our Girls movement, that are really trying to emphasize other ways in which girls need to be uplifted outside of the United States, where you still do have a pandemic of girls being relegated to marriage and being only fit for marriage, and being everything else about their development being policed by men and by society, or even by older women, when you talk about things like genital mutilation, et cetera. So that is still rampant around the world. And I think a lot of people focused on the Bring Back Our Girls movement because it was so shocking, the idea that people would physically take away 300 girls to sell them for marriage. But that's just such a reality around the world. So I think that, you know, there have been some celebrities that have gotten on board with that. Michelle Obama did, and I think that was her most tweeted tweet of the year, was the tweet she did where she had the Bring Back Our Girls sign. So I think to the extent that you had celebrities converging with real people, the women who were a part of the movement about minimum wage, that was a movement that was led largely by women who were talking about their own empowerment just economically. So I think that, to me, is a lot more sort of impressive in the real world.
Well, I definitely don't, you know, I love Beyonce, but I don't think that celebrities are going to save us. I don't think that they're the ones who are gonna create the grassroots movements that lead policy to change and that actually affect the daily access issues for many people's lives in this movement and in the many parts of this movement, right? Because when I say feminism, I think that sometimes we have this one little idea of what it is, but it's feminisms, right? That not all of us have the same lives, we're not a monolith, and that we also have different goals and needs because of our differences, right? And so I think what celebrities allow us to do is they give us a entry point to begin discussing these very intricate issues.
And sometimes I think that what they can do is drop the conversation in. What we're trying to do on a larger scale is to create communities where people will understand that we can't just react when horrible things are happening, when all of a sudden there's a Hobby Lobby case, or well, then all of a sudden this shit's happening, right? What we're trying to create with this Lady Parts Justice thing is to bring two different things. One is to understand that when you get together with your friends and the joy that you derive from them, that has to be a complete joy that you can actually make some noise. You know, if you can get together in your local community and find out who the crazy ass city council or school board person is and shame them relentlessly with your friends, that's a good idea.
It is.
But also the second part of it, and it's the part that I think has been the biggest chasm in feminism for me, is that white feminism has been driving the conversation to a fault, to where for 30 years we didn't talk about it at all. So what we're hoping to do in 2015 and beyond is to bring communities together who believe that there is all this disparity, and then to have people stop and have white women listen to Hispanic women, Black women, hear what their experiences are, where they come from, and then make a commitment to be the pack mule for those people who we have great ideas. We actually know how to speak with the Black community. It's like, great, what I'll do is assemble the chairs or whatever you need us to do so that you can, you know, create the vision for it, and you have an infrastructure of people. Because as anybody who's worked trying to develop something, we all know, you are the one-man band almost all the time, and so you're trying to make the calls and make the posters and do the thing, and if people got together and said, oh my God, I'm finally really listening to what your experience is, you have a vision for it, let me help, I think that just adds to another layer of, this is now my life, like my yoga practice and everything else, and I want it to be full, and now I'm learning more from everybody else's life and contributing on many levels, not always being the voice.
Right. And do you think social media has helped been that sort of equalizer? I mean, and we were talking about Bring Back Our Girls. I think about that issue being, making national headlines, right? As an amazing thing, because I think even a year ago or 2 years ago, it would have been hard to get that kind of issue on the map. And there's something amazing happening now, which, I mean, you being in the cable news industry, you know this very well. Social media sort of used to be driven by news. So something would happen in the news and then people would talk about it in social media. And now we have social media driving news. So something happens on Twitter, there's a hashtag, and then you guys talk about it, right? And so I know that in your show, you guys do a really good job of actually incorporating that. Do you think that's encouraging? Do you think that it's going to change the conversation in a real way?
No, I think it is. I mean, social media is so far ahead of cable news, you know, and with all due respect to my actual job, social media is
careful,
so,
girl.
I do. It's so far ahead of us. I mean, things are out in the world and people are hashtagging it or tweeting about it long before it gets processed and ground through the cable news process and finally makes air. Right. So we're actually, in a way, gleaning information from social media more than we're, at the same time, you have a lot of reporters now who are trying to break stories on social media. It's sort of a little bit of a two-way street, but it's definitely, social media is definitely far out ahead. And I think in terms of organizing, people laughed off hashtag activism, hashtivism, and sort of thought that it was irrelevant and unimportant. People even put down the Bring Back Our Girls movement, but it actually is quite powerful. And if you look what's happening even around the Ferguson, Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, that's being driven literally on social media down to where people go to organize. The flip side of that, and I think especially for women in social media, is it's also a dangerous space because it's anonymous. And it's become a place where women who are vocal get especially targeted. And that's across the board, whether it's in the sort of silly ways like Gamergate, where it became very toxic and private information about people is being released, but it's almost always being done to women, or women who speak out just even on everyday issues that affect women's lives, on issues that matter, that are feminist issues or even non-claimed feminist issues, just issues of women's lives. The attacks on women are especially toxic in social media, and it's something that Twitter is just now trying to deal with, but I think that that's one place where social media is far behind. They haven't figured it out because that kind of anti-woman ethos is especially vicious on social media.
Yeah, I think it was Goldie Taylor who tweeted, these trolls so loyal. And I was like, oh my God. I need to print that out and put it on my bulletin board.
Yes.
Because it's so true, right? It's like this idea of how dare you speak up, right? But I think it's also reflective of how, patriarchy and just how outside of social media, how it's reflective of that behavior, of that oppression, of that let's shut these voices down, right? And so for me, I particularly see Twitter as the voice of the people, right? It holds mainstream media accountable. I know in my own life, I had a major moment in CNN that it was social media that became that was my community, that came into that studio space with me the next night, that allowed me to know that I had comrades coming with me as I walked into that space who are going to fight for me, right? And so it also gives greater access to community as well as these trolls who are so loyal. Right?
Yeah, and do you think that, social media was part of the reason why you got to school Piers Morgan and actually go back on the show and for them to react? Do you think that would have happened if Twitter or if Facebook, if people, weren't backing you up on social media?
No, because if I wouldn't have tweeted, get it the fuck together, then it would not have been a feud. It would not have been reported as a feud in mainstream media, which then would have gotten me back on there and actually having to set the record straight on how I define my life, how I define myself, and the larger issue of just marginalized people being able to say, this is how you're going to tell our stories. And what that taught me was that I can never silence myself, that I can I need to express rage and anger when it's justified, right? There's a lot of things to be angry about and to speak up about that. And then I think the other layer of what it taught me was like never be basic, right? Like keep, like, these are, basic is one of the, I think I said yes, basic. I said a lot of banned words according to Time magazine, and I will continue to say those words. But.
Good. I know, I say, if you're going to operate in the middle of the road, you're going to cause accidents on both sides. So don't be there. Yeah. But I also think too, but I also think too, the thing about the thing that I worry a lot about on Twitter is, I spent 30 years doing stand-up on stage, right? So I developed a way to deal with people who are shitheads and who treat me like shit. And when young women and young people are developing their voices, and the medium is now the internet, and that's where you're writing and that's where you're creating, I really feel like we need to have seminars where we really walk people through what people actually see in your feed versus what you're feeling and you see, so that people can not have their voices silenced, because I do fear that some of our strongest, most interesting people are going to be freaked out by these shitheads. And when you have like Twitchy, do you know what Twitchy is? Yeah. It's this horrible website that Michelle Malkin runs, by the way, and a Christian company bought it. Just bear that in mind when I tell you the story. And they literally just dig into Twitter and find people who clearly they're threatened by, who they think are making some noise and being influencers. And then they subtweet you and they send it to all of their crazy right-wing nutbags, who then in turn come at you just like, whore, 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 you're stupid whore. Like all of a sudden you're like,
for hours.
For hours. Yeah. Like, wow. And then you're trying to figure out why you're a stupid whore. And it's like, who told? Like, I don't know. Like, but it's like always just, and it's always some dumb thing that maybe you said on Twitter that they thought was stupid or something. It's never anything really important. And it feels really scary. Yeah. When that's happening to you. So I really want to like have boot camp, like social media boot camp, so that like it can be like, no one saw this but you, so that's the good news. And not to mention, half of those people you hate anyway. They're like, I'd never have sex with you. It was like, duh. Like, like why is that a thing? Like, oh, I'm now devastated that you and I, with the eagle wrapped in the flag with the Benghazi fucking ribbon, is never gonna have sex with me. Like, that is devastating. How can I go on?
And that's a good point.
They're all eagles, too. They're all eagles. Eagles are not in danger. They're on Twitter.
And isn't it interesting that, social media, most social media users are female, right? And yet these organizations or these platforms don't seem to care what our experience is on these platforms. So, I mean, recently with the UVA scandal and the conservative blogger, who I won't even name, you know, was able to release information about a rape victim, able to, you know, produce threats without really getting any kind of, without having Twitter react at all. What did you guys make of that story? Were you surprised? Do you think it's going to get better? What should Twitter do?
Yeah, and it's not just Twitter. I mean, it's all social media, because the idea of doxing has become another sort of phenomenon where the retaliation isn't just tweeting horrible things about you. It's also using social media, using those platforms to release your social security number, your address, your phone number, to send people after you. So actually, and it's primarily directed at women, and sort of making the environment physically threatening, in some, you know, and in some cases life-threatening, to try to silence people's voices. I think Zerlina Maxwell's coming tonight. She's been one of the people that I really do praise for being very aggressive about trying to get Twitter to face up to what's happening, because they allow anonymity. Now, Facebook has been able to police it more, because you have to be a real person to have a Facebook account. You have to actually have your picture and a name and an email. Whereas Twitter, you can just make 10 accounts and they all have just a bird, and you don't even have a picture, or you do have the Gadsden flag or the whatever, and you can have no followers and go after people. So Twitter just released a new upgrade to their platform that will make it easier to block people, so that if you block someone, they actually can't see your timeline anymore. Because the other phenomenon that I get a lot too is people who follow you so that they can police your timeline and try to police your speech. So they follow you and then try to go after you. So it's not policed enough at all, but they're starting to realize, because they've just been hectored about it by women who are prominent on online to change it.
Yeah.
Are you all even able to look at your mentions?
No. Oh, I do all the time.
You look at your mentions? I weed mines out with. I just go with
you can filter
people you follow.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think everyone has that. I don't think everyone has that.
I think that's actually incredibly problematic, because I got verified very recently, which was like the best moment of my life. But also,
that's sad.
It's but then it's really. Yeah. But then now I only get. I mean, it's also awesome, but I only get to follow or like select mentions that from people who follow me. So I don't have to see all of the mentions in my feed, but then who gets verified and who, you know, it's like it comes with privilege naturally. So I'm like, why doesn't Twitter roll that out for everyone? Why doesn't everyone have that kind of option?
Well, I'm sort of sadistic about Twitter because I look at all my mentions, and the reason that I do, and people are like, why do you pay attention to the guy with 5 followers who's shitting on you? And oftentimes I'll retweet and I'll just write voter, because it doesn't matter if he has 50,000 followers or 5 followers. That person is going to every fucking midterm election and voting. Everyone. That person will show up. They will crawl out of that basement and they will get to that poll and they will vote. And I just think sometimes it's a really good reminder, especially when we're all in these spaces that sometimes are really toxic and scary and weird. I think that when you try to convince people how bad it is, it's easier to show sometimes than it is to tell. So it's like retweet 5 in a row of this person and all the ways that they want to say horrible things. It's like, oh, that really, it does exist. It's like, yeah, I'm not just angry because I just feel like it.
Yeah. I used to put, when I had my blog, I would post the worst ones and correct the spelling.
Yeah.
I put the little red mark.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get really angry.
No, it's really good. Or you go, oh, you seem fun. I treat them like slashers sometimes.
They're always misspelled. It's just
the grammar's great.
of them.
The grammar's entertaining. I want to come back for a moment to the Piers Morgan interview.
Why?
I'm sorry.
I don't want to talk about him anymore. I'm like, can we move on, please?
Well, we don't have to talk about the interview, but I think we should talk about what happened afterwards. I, as a sort of a person who was just a viewer, as a feminist and sort of an activist, I saw that really as a watershed moment. I finally saw people paying attention to the way that we talk to and about trans people in the media. Are you aware of the implications of what you were able to do that night? Were you aware when you went back of sort of the power that would have in terms of changing the conversation?
Not necessarily. I never thought that the reason why I didn't want to talk about it again, because I feel like the reason why everyone was paying attention to it was because there was this white, cisgendered, rich, heterosexual man who decided to pay attention to this issue and to challenge it.
Right.
And so then that way I, by extension, by being close to this paragon of power in our culture or in our society, was then co-signed, right? Like in this way that now we can listen to her, right? This young black trans woman writer. We'll pay attention to her now.
Right.
And so for me, I'm always conflicted around that, because most of my media appearances have been almost safe appearances, right? Like with Melissa Harris Perry, you know, alongside Joy. And so it was the first time when I went outside of that space and I realized, like, kind of like Liz retweeting these voters, you see what the world is kind of like. And in the moment of going through it, all I felt was abuse, to be honest. I knew that I had these people behind me, but just as many people who were behind me, there were also just as many people who were like, die, you're a man, you know, you're crazy, da, 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 da. I couldn't even look at my Twitter feed. And I just realized just so much about it. And so now I'm having a bit more reflection around what that moment meant. I'm tired of talking about him in particular, but I think for me, and I think for a lot of trans people, that's not surprising. That interaction is a normal interaction with people who don't know about trans people. Like just the other night, just the other day I was at a brunch and someone heard about me, oh, what's your book about? And I'm very open, you know, my book is about growing up as a young trans girl. Oh my God, you're trans? And they're going through it, and I'm like, oh, here's the 400 times I've been 13 years old, out as a trans woman, what that means. And that interaction that I had with him the first night is the same interaction that I have with people all the time. And so for me, that interaction was not new or normal. The only thing was that there was a camera watching this time, and people could check themselves now. And so I'm glad that it exists, despite all that kind of went through in that moment, and I'm glad it's there.
Right. But sorry.
I was just gonna say, the thing that I really love is the video that you did with your friend with the reversal.
Alicia Menendez.
Yeah. Have you seen this video?
Everyone's
It's the best video ever, because it's like explains so much in an amount of time. It's like if you've never met a trans person or you have and you're confused and you don't know, it's such a good thing to watch to get an idea of what day-to-day life feels like and what kind of questions, and they sound, it was just really great, and I thought super educational and funny and smart and touching, and it just had every element. I loved it. So, but you've all seen it, so I'm not telling anything. But it was cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I encourage everyone to watch it. I mean, I certainly feel like it created a shift in the conversation, in feminism at least, but it seems like it didn't go all the way sort of to normal folks or people who are maybe watching at home who are outside of that feminist world. Is that your sense?
I don't know. I don't know if it was demographically seen in that kind of clear-cut way. I think a lot of people were really, to be honest, they saw the first appearance and they were confused. They didn't understand why that was bad. Right. Because that's the way in which they would react to someone like me who doesn't look trans, whatever that means. Right. To me, now that I look back on it, I think about the people that did reach out to me on a private note, and I think it was not a coincidence that a lot of the people that reached out to me privately to offer me counsel and help and support were a lot of black women who are vocal. Right. Because I think that there is something very specific about that kind of checking in a public space that's very much linked to black womanhood. That was also in that space that was not just about trans people. It's a very specific person who is in that space. And I think that we have to talk specifically about all of the intersectional, layered dynamics that were going on in that space. The reason why it was me in that space saying that you're not going to talk about my life this way. And then coming back was, how dare you, I'm going to deal with you tomorrow. Right. Love it. You know?
Love it. Okay, last question, because we're going to be opening it up to the floor
that was
very soon. I mean, we've talked a lot about progress, and I think, I don't think it's a fact. Women as a whole have made great strides, especially in 2014. And so we saw the highest amount of women in Congress. We've seen more women in managerial roles. leaning in, negotiating in the workplace. But that progress has been, only for some women, right? So as middle and upper middle class women are advancing, some other women are lagging behind. So 1 in 3 American women lives in poverty. 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women. A lot of them, most of them, don't even have paid sick leave. And then we have immigrant women who are stuck often in low-paying jobs, who are doing domestic work for the middle and upper class women who are going out in the workplace, right? So there's a cost. We also have, trans people who are twice as likely to be unemployed, and many of them happen to be underemployed as well. So as the ceiling is getting higher, right, is the floor getting lower? Is there a cost to this advancement, and how do we create a world or a type of feminism where everyone can be elevated?
Yeah, and I mean, it's an important point to make, because I think one of the reasons that traditionally, neither Janet nor myself would have been feminists probably 30 years ago, because, and I'm just talking about as Black women, we were not in that conversation. I think it felt frivolous to a lot of women of color when the core of what feminists were arguing for were things that made middle-class white women's lives easier.
Right.
Black women were always working. We came here working, not because we wanted to come here at all. I mean, but so the idea of being able to have a little more just didn't feel relevant. I think now, what's better and what has improved is that there is a broader definition, and women who consider themselves at the core of the feminist movement, if you call it a movement, are starting to realize that the issues that matter to women of color, to women who don't have means, also need to be brought in, and that it can all be brought under the umbrella, whether or not people claim the label. There are a lot of people who don't claim the feminist label, but who still would like to have a higher minimum wage, who would like to have equality in the workplace. We're still fighting over equal pay, God forbid. I mean, I think the Equal Pay Act was passed in the 60s. We're still fighting over
whether it
equal pay.
exists.
Right, we're still fighting over, Kristen Gillibrand has been waging, a mini war inside of Congress to do something about sexual assault in the military. We still have sexual assault rampant on campus, and we still have a Congress that is determined. I mean, the latest spending bill, this $1.1 trillion bill, still has provisions in it that are going after things like Planned Parenthood. It's still an obsession to try to limit women's reproductive freedom. That's still happening now. Right. So I think you just have a broader definition of what has to be fought for. It's not just middle-class comforts for a small number of women. It's actually trying to raise the entire economic floor for the country by raising the economic floor for women, because women are the breadwinners in so many households, and especially in poor households, they are the majority of breadwinners. So I think broadening the base of issues has been really, good for feminism.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right, and I feel like with our group, we have this team of writers, and 65% of them are women of color who are driving this conversation. And we're shooting a video on Sunday that's a takeoff on White Christmas called I'm Dreaming of a White Privilege. And it's all Black women who are talking about the experience that wouldn't that be lovely to be able to walk the earth and have that. And so to be able to just have that, like the idea that we're going with for our fundraising thing makes me endlessly happy. So I just think that it's a really good idea for white feminists to do less talking and more listening.
Yeah.
I think my answer would definitely point to a resource. I would say that in 1973, Sylvia Rivera, a trans rights pioneer, a legend, one of the people who was rioting outside of Stonewall Inn that linked or launched the LGBT movement, she gave a speech in 1973 at 22 years old, and she was speaking about things like criminalization, like sex work, like prisoners' rights, like trans womanhood not being seen as valid, silencing and erasure even within the LGBT movement at that budding part of the movement. And what I would say is that it hasn't gotten worse since then, it's the same.
Right.
And that's what's sad, right? But now we have this media portrait, particularly with trans women of color, as if we've made it, right? We got 2 out there, and girl, liberals are like, ooh, we did it. Look at what we did. And it's like at the same time, right? When we talk about these women's lives, right? It's not this blanket trans people. It's particular people who are being attacked, right? Who are being arrested, and a lot of it is based on race, right? And class, and of course, gender presentation, and all of these different factors and layers. But I think because trans women of color embody so many different identities, right? There's transness, there's blackness or brownness, there's womanhood there. Racial justice, feminists, and LGBT movements are not centering them at all. And so they fall in between the cracks of all of these different movements. Right. And so we see Laverne Cox on the cover of Time and we're like, yay, for trans people. But it's like, you know, that's not enough, right? It's not enough that she's on that cover. It's a start. It's a start of a conversation, just like Beyonce being on that stage. Declaring that is a start of a conversation. And so I hope that things get better as people understand more, as they feel as if they know Sophia Bursett, right? And then in turn knowing Laverne Cox, and then in turn knowing CeCe McDonald, right? And so I hope that that's where we kind of go there. But trans women of color have been here for a very long time, and they've been speaking out about their lives and their issues for a very long time. But things are kind of the same.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I lied. I have one more little surprise, dessert, which is a lightning round, because there are so many things we didn't get to. I want it to have a little 10 really quick questions, and the pace is going to be very rapid. Answers in less than 140 characters, please.
Can we just tweet you the answers?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, tweet it. Okay, are you guys ready? Are you guys ready?
Do we all answer one, or is it like I get one and Joy get one?
You go. It will be Liz, Joy, Janet, and then.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh God, it's pressure.
Okay.
Pressure, I know.
Who would you rather have a slumber party with, Olivia Pope or Beyonce?
Who?
Olivia Pope or Beyonce?
Oh no, Olivia Pope will spill on your couch.
Okay.
Beyonce.
No. It's true.
That's easy. Olivia Pope, because I got to talk to her about her men problems.
Oh, so much.
You know what? I will actually say, I would have said Olivia Pope because she's going to bring the red wine.
That too.
But I'll say
Then she'll
Beyonce
drink
after
it
that
all.
7-Eleven video because we need to kind of reenact
Oh,
that.
God.
The red solo cup. Yes.
Totally. Okay, if there's one thing men could do to make the world a better place, what would it be?
Listen.
Great.
Clean the kitchen.
Sorry.
Personally.
I say stop taking up so much space.
Okay, very hard. Cupcakes or cronuts?
Cupcakes.
I've never had a cronut, so I'm gonna go cupcakes.
Same answers.
All right. Who would be a better BFF, Liz Lemon or Leslie Knope?
Okay, I don't know who Leslie knows.
Yeah, who? I don't know. I don't.
Amy Poehler's character in Parks and Rec.
Oh.
Runs for the city council. She's like very.
Pass.
Well, so Liz Lemon.
Clearly.
Okay, would you rather have to listen to iTunes terms and conditions on your morning commute or listen to Todd Aiken's new audiobook?
Oh, Todd Aiken's new audiobook.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot more fun.
Okay.
Funny. Yeah.
Terms and conditions.
Paying extra for guacamole, would you do it?
Depends who's guacamole. You can't just have guacamole. It depends.
Okay, tough one.
That's an avocado. I'm saying no.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Would you rather have to sit next to your racist uncle during an episode of Orange is New Black or sit next to Princeton mom on a 6-hour flight, but she has Boston cream donuts?
I wish I had Boston cream donuts to shove into the face of my racist uncle.
Okay. That's great.
I'm on a diet. Give me the racist.
All right.
Bring it.
I don't think I have any racist uncles because they're all people of color. It's not as if they can't be, but I don't think it operates that same way.
Big or Aiden?
What?
Oh my
Aiden.
God, Sex and the City reference?
Aiden.
Big
Sorry,
or
I'm going first.
Aiden? You're like, clearly. I'm with you.
I'm cultural incompetence.
Culturally.
Golden Girls.
Golden Girls, okay.
Golden Girls.
Betty White.
It's the same fucking show. It's the same show. It's actually.
Oh my God.
It's the
You just
same.
blew my mind. insane.
show.
Mind blown. Mind blown.
Sophia.
Show. That's crazy.
Would you rather?
You never.
My mind is blown.
Yeah.
But wait, is Frozen also the same?
As the Golden
Yeah.
Girls?
Frozen is like everything.
I haven't seen Frozen.
Okay.
What happens in Frozen?
I don't remember.
Would you rather be friends with someone who wears a fedora or someone who openly admits to watching 2.5 Men?
Fedora.
Fedora.
I wear a fedora.
Okay. Last one. If you had a magical.
This game is like, seriously.
Offensive.
Okay, this is the last one. This is a good one.
I'm sure.
If no cultural references or references to hats. If you had a magical wand to change one thing about the world to make it a better place for girls and women, what would it be?
Did I get the wand at Babeland?
Excellent.
That magical wand would be giving them the opportunity to succeed or fail on their own terms. And it would vibrate. What?
I can't follow that. Can't follow that. Making the world a better place for girls and women. Just magic. I guess it would be,
Cronuts with no calories?
Well, I actually right now really am craving a cronut.
Yeah, we can go
just
for
because of
cronut.
this whole discussion. I guess it would have to be making all of the barriers to education around the world for girls disappear.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think it's the power to self-define. I think to say simply that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to all your lovely questions now.
Thanks, Liz.
Not a lightning round, so you can answer in more than one
That
sentence.
was hard.
That was.
Stressful.
You guys are great.
Who's ate
You
it?
guys are great.
Tell me later.
You need the furniture.
Oh, okay.
He's a big right winger.
I'll binge watch it later. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't he Bo Derek's
Yes.
Okay, now I'm just terrified.
boyfriend?
Okay.
Yeah.
When
The
an
Applebee's
issue
commercials.
becomes
The voice.
very popular, it may increase awareness, but also falls victim to becoming a fleeting fad fading as quickly from headlines as it came about. How do we prevent that from happening?
What was the first part of that?
When an issue becomes very popular and it didn't have awareness before, and then all of a sudden it like everyone's talking about it, will it go away as fast as it sort of came about? Essentially is the question, right?
I feel like we're talking specifically about like
Feminism?
media paying attention
Yeah.
to a certain issue,
Headlines, right,
like a news cycle.
right.
I mean, I think that's possible to happen because I do think there is a certain faddish quality to almost anything, right? And I think with feminism now, because of the Beyonce factor and all that, I think there's a risk of that if there are not any real issues attached to it and people don't see it as something meaningful beyond the label.
Yeah, and I think that the crucial part of it, not to keep going back to what I'm doing, but it's what I'm doing, is that in order for something to sustain, it has to really, the influencers and the people have to really make it, it has to be a way of life. It has to be incorporated into your life. That means it has to be interesting, touching, fun, smart, meaningful, purposeful, changing the way you live, changing your community. So it really does have to, if it's, it just has to be that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a thing that we all react to and then freak out when nobody votes.
Any thoughts? No.
Well, I feel like if I think about it in terms of transness, right? Like trans is really hot right now. In terms of media, I still think that what Liz said, it influences culture. And so I don't think that it ever really goes away because there's always remnants of it somewhere, right? People know Sophia Bursett now, or they know Jeffrey Taymor's character in Transparent, and they feel as if that's a part of their lives. And so then they know more, right? Like I think about just that moment with Sophia taking her healthcare into her own hands in a situation where her body belongs to the state, right? It's under their custody and care, and she's demanding her health care. I think a lot of people who are watching this show may not have come to see that. That's not what they wanted to learn, but they know now, right? And I think that it influences so many other things. And so in terms of a pop cultural space, I think that it's I don't think it ever really goes away.
Right. And I think
The headlines may
right,
go away,
right.
but I don't think it
the
leaves.
effect is lasting. And you know, we've seen it happen with, I think media has an incredible power. And you know, the story around Jian Ghomeshi, you know, the Canadian journalist who abused all of these women, there was a spike in reports and women going to clinics asking for help and reporting abuse. So even if we're not talking about it as much as we did, it certainly had an impact on, you know, the women who are watching this all unfold, which speaks to, you know, telling the stories of survivors in a way that is respectful, and how important that is.
Well, I also think too, it's so interesting if you're in a space where you feel comfortable with women and you're talking about abuse and you ask a woman if she has experienced sexual assault, it's rare that you meet a woman who hasn't. And it's almost jarring in a way. And so when the passion to demonize that experience is coming down so fast, the only deduction I can make is you want permission. So you need to make sure that women aren't believed. You want permission to harm women, so you need to make sure women aren't believed. Right. And I don't know what else to think, because it's so prevalent that I don't know what else it is, because it's crazy that someone is so dedicated to making somehow rape people that are lying about their rapes some sort of thing that's epidemic all over the place. And it's like, that's hardly ever happening ever. Right. Except by people who are very sad, ill individuals. You know, right. I don't know what I just said, but it just freaks me out.
No, I think it's a great point. So, okay, what do we make of all of the men that are coming out now in favor of feminism? How do we capitalize on that?
Well, while I love them all coming out, I don't know how you feel, but sometimes it's like a man comes out and says, I'm a feminist, and give him a pony and a donut. Yeah. And we're so like, oh my God, you're everything. And when we come out and say we're feminists, it's like, fuck yeah!
Yeah.
I kind of wish it would be as exciting when women said they were feminists.
I kind of agree.
And you know, because we are very excited when they come out. We shouldn't be. It's like when a guy decides to do the dishes. Oh, thank you. And it's like, can you just do the dishes? Like, like, can't you just be a feminist? Because you should be.
It's like my kids wanting, you know, money to clean your room. It's like, dude, you're supposed to clean your room. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, that's not what you're gonna get money for. Like, you're already supposed to do that. And I think even with, you know, men are supposed to respect women's desire to have liberty and to be who they are and do what they want to do. You're just supposed to do that. Right. So I actually don't think, I think making a note of it is good, I guess, if it encourages more men to openly, you know, not be assholes. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure what it is that we're doing when but I think I guess it's good if it encourages other guys to say that's okay to do. Right. But I think men are supposed to respect women.
Is it cool? Is it like finally cool to respect women? Because I feel like for a long time, maybe it wasn't.
Ryan Gosling memes are cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how we should frame it.
Yeah, if it's not cool to respect women, we are in trouble.
Yeah.
It depends though, because I think there is, you know, we're making light of it, but one of the things in conservative circles, and I'll speak carefully here, but I think one of the principles that's driving a lot of conservatism is trying to reassert what they see as traditional roles, including the traditional role for men. And so belittling men who are feminists or belittling women is part of the shtick, right? It's part of the Rush Limbaugh shtick to, you know,
it's a war
call
on men.
women chicks and say it's a war on men. Yeah. That's actually part of it, and it's sort of the society is seen as degrading men and diminishing men on purpose as some sort of a conspiracy to kind of end Western civilization. And so that's what drives a lot of even the debate around birth control, this idea that how dare women walk away from their prime directive, which is to have children for men, and that rape isn't real because it's not understanding that what men want is what you're supposed to, you know, that you really don't have these options, and that women are sort of undermining Western civilization. So I think part of it is political.
I think part of it's narcissism too. If all these men are just thinking everything's about them, it's just, we just want to have some equal footing and, like, you know, a place in the world where we're valued and it's all a level playing field. So anytime it's like, this is about hating men and blah, 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 and it's like, actually, it's not really about you. Actually not about you. Yeah. It's actually about us just trying to have some agency, sir.
Okay, is there anyone in the millennial generation that you consider the next Gloria? If so, who?
How old is millennial?
1980 on, right?
80, yeah.
18 to 34?
Yeah.
Sure. Sure there is.
I feel like we've had Gloria.
Yeah,
So I'm
Gloria.
not really looking for
Yeah,
another one. Like, it's great that she's there.
Yeah.
But I think that there are, I think about the circle of women that I look to on Twitter specifically who offer commentary and their thoughts about their lives and the things that they notice, who don't get to be on stages, who are doing work for free and for volunteer, who are doing grassroots work. Like, each one of them,
Right.
I feel, are their own movements. I guess for me, I'm not really looking for another Gloria. I would love another, like, Barbara Smith, bell hooks, you know.
I mean, somebody who I would suggest, who I really love, who is a new writer for The Guardian. She's a poet. Her name is Sarita McFadden. And Sarita McFadden is somebody who I admire greatly as a writer and a talent and a feminist and a Midwestern girl from Milwaukee. And she's somebody who I feel like is just incredible. So I just love Sarita's work. I just thought I'd give her a plug. Sarita. Go.
Okay, this one's from Twitter. How can white feminism bridge the gap to other minority women?
I would say, you know, the shut up and listen part is helpful. But I would also really say is the way you bridge a gap like you do all the time, which is live your life in the world, not in the world that you know, so that you get to know people of color and where they come from and their experiences and how they come from and what they do. And that way you can learn and listen and understand that, you know, so much I think of what white feminism has focused on is reproductive rights instead of reproductive justice. And to understand what the expansion of that really means for people, I think is really an important thing to know, that it goes from childcare, wages, economics, access to birth control. You know, it's kind of, since I've been really focusing in the past 3 years and I've been on this big journey, you know, it breaks my heart a lot of times. I'm on the road constantly. I am on the ground at clinics and I'm in communities, and it breaks my heart when I hear white feminists say things to me like, "Oh yeah, you know, I used to use Planned Parenthood or go to clinics, and then I didn't get that it was such a problem because I got health insurance." And I'm like, there's people who always use those clinics, and then within those clinics, there's what's been really great, especially talking about trans healthcare. Like, it's been a real problem, and my trans friends have said it has been oftentimes a very shaming experience to go to traditional spaces to receive health care. So it's really nice to be able to be on the ground and talk to physicians and clinicians and say, hey, you guys are having a little bedside manner problem from what I'm understanding, and maybe think about that a little bit more. So to be an ally, but really it's just starting with live your life with people in it who come from different experiences so that you can value them, honor them, and prioritize them as your own.
Francesca Ramsey did a really good video actually recently. I think it was this week or last week, and it's about how to be an ally. You can Google it. It's really, really good. And I think the metaphor that she gives is like, you know, sort of listening instead of talking, and like giving the megaphone to someone else. And like, if it was a metaphor of like Destiny's Child, you're not Beyonce, you're not Michelle, you're like way in the back. You have to, you know, be able to take a step back. So I encourage everyone to look it up. She's great. Last question, also from Twitter. Can you identify as a feminist and a conservative/moderate?
Yeah, because I think that the definition of feminism, I think, is overcomplicated. It's just believing that women have the equal right to liberty, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as men. It's just believing that women are human beings who are not the property of men, who are not in the province of men, and who have the right to pursue their destiny on their own terms. I think anyone can believe that. You know, I think what's complicated for conservative women is, again, the socialization against the feminist label on the right can make, I think, conservatives feel like they shouldn't adopt that label because there's something unconservative about it, and there's anti-Western civilization about it. But I think that's on them. I think if conservative women believe themselves to be feminists, then they can certainly are free to be that, right? I think the complication is more for them than it is for feminism.
Yeah, I think if you're a biblical literalist, you probably couldn't be a feminist, only because there's roles that are defined in there, and there's no room for you to expand outside the role because the role's been defined for you. But I think if you're just a politically conservative person who...
Yeah, you want tax cuts, but
you want tax cuts, you know, yeah.
Okay, we'll end on that. Tax cuts.
I bet Olympia Snow says she's a feminist, I suppose.
I would say probably not in politics, no, because I mean that's the thing, is that there's an ideological and a political component to it, that you don't want that label, like, right? So Sarah Palin is like a bear hunting wolf hunter, but she wouldn't say she was a feminist, right? Because it's cool to be a gun-toting, you know, woman who can, you know, fry up a bear in a pan. But you can't be that. You can't. She's the governor, and her husband is the governor, is the first gentleman, or whatever, or whatever
First
she
dude.
was. She governor for like a week or something.
Is that what
she
it's
was
called?
a governor for a minute.
She was a governor for a half. She was the half. She's a
for
half
half a term.
governor.
But at that time, that would have been sort of the definition of a feminist, right? A strong woman got elected governor, and she's, you know, shooting the bears and doing this thing. But in that conservative ideology, that would be an off-putting thing to declare her a feminist. And that's, again, that's just a choice that's ideological. I think, you know, feminism has its own very simple definition, and people either gravitate to it or not. And I think a lot of it is ideological, and people get put off by the label because they have all this other stuff that they're trying to be politically.
I think it just depends on actions, right? Just like allyship, right? It's not a label, it's an action, right? It's a continual process of action and education that you take upon yourself. So if the things that you're pushing forward in terms of policy or the things that you're supporting or you're voting for, if that does not align with ensuring that there's gender equality, then I wouldn't necessarily say that you're a feminist, even though you may think that you are. So I think it's about actions more than it is about putting the label of conservative, moderate, or feminist onto you.
Well, hopefully Beyonce will all bring us back together.
We can all come together.
Is she here?
Is she?
I think so. In the back somewhere.
She was with the princess.
Was she? Oh yes,
Yeah, they were.
true.
Yeah,
Real couple.
at the Barclays Center. That was fun.
That was awkward, actually. The photos were terrible. It was like touching the ball. Did you guys see it? It was really bad. You should look it up. Thank you so much for being here. There's a bar at the back. Grab a drink and you know, have a good night. Thank you, and thank you to our panelists.
Thank you. Thanks to Liz. On behalf of Liz.
Oh, you guys.